Hello, everybody, and welcome to the day one coverage of Reprieve Media CIC Double Handful 2025 coverage of the Cheltenham Festival. Thank you very much for joining us. It's always very welcome to have you here. I hope you enjoy the show. My name's Paul Newman. I'm the Director and Secretary of Reprieve Media CIC, and for this preview on day one, I will be joined by my regular host, Steve Allpress, who is also going to give his views on the festival for day one this year and hopefully through the rest of the week. Steve is actually attending the first 2 days of the Cheltenham Festival in person, so it's always good to have somebody on course representing Double Handful on the day. Hope you have a fantastic time on course, Steve. Right, before I hand over to Steve for his preview of the Supreme Novices Hurdle, I'm going to just touch on the race myself. A fitting tribute, really, to the late jockey Michael O'Sullivan, who sadly lost his life in a fall in Ireland around a month ago. He rode the winner of the race 2 years ago, Marine Nationale, in the Connell colours. They've got a runner going round today, and I do think this is a fitting tribute to young Michael O'Sullivan and his family. And may Michael O'Sullivan rest in peace. And Steve, it's over to you for the preview of the first race of the week, the Supreme Novices Hurdle.
So we kick off then with the Michael O'Sullivan Supreme Novices Hurdle, grade 1 over 2 miles. Supreme Novices Hurdle's one of my favourite races a week. You have that roar before the start. A lot of anticipation and excitement has built for months and months, and you usually get good horse win this race and go on to better things. And we could be saying that about a horse in here going forward. My fancy for the race is that horse. It's Copec the Board, Willie Mullins, can be ridden by Paul Townend. There was a lot of talk about this horse. He's a big, high reputation at Close Sutton, and he made his hurdles debut on Boxing Day at Leopardstown, and he beat one of his stable companions, Cowabunga, who unfortunately has had a setback and won't be seen at the festival. But just looking back at what Cowabunga did after that, beating William Money, I think that form by Copec de Board beating him is fairly strong. And on top of that, there's a lot of improvement to come, you'd imagine anyway. But yeah, Copec de Board's my fancy for the race. What I like about the horse is he looks to have a lot of natural ability. He's got a big engine. You can see he's got a lot of pace as well. The thing that I didn't like about him was his jumping. On Hurdle's debut, his jumping was non-existent. He was hitting flight after flight, and he was losing ground throughout the race. But as I mentioned, he's got a big engine, and he kept coming back at Cowabunga that day, and then at the line he was well on top. And I just thought to myself, if they can get his jumping to hold up and just get him a bit more slick over these flights, he's going to be a massive horse to be reckoned with. And I feel then at DRF, his jumping was much improved. He still jumps big here and there, but all in all, his jumping was much improved. And I'm hoping that his jumping will improve again going into Supreme. My only worry really is that he's a very keen horse, and I'm hoping the occasion doesn't get to him. I have this feeling that they're going to try and keep him covered up throughout the race. Willie Mullins has got quite a few other horses in here, and I'm just wondering, will he set a couple off just to try and settle Copec de Board in behind him, and then just try and keep the lid on him as long as possible? My gut instinct is they're probably going to be able to keep the lid on him for 4 or 5 flights, and then Townend's probably just going to have to let the rein go a little bit. But yeah, he's a massive horse with huge potential. There are pros and cons to him, but all in all, I think if you just look at the ability shown in those races, I think there's a lot of potential, and I think he's certainly the horse in this race they've got to beat. I'll go through some of the others. Romeo Coolio, he was runner-up in last year's bumper. Again, he's a horse that's held in high regard by Gordon Elliott. He had a bit of a busy start to the season, but obviously we haven't seen him for a while. He didn't go to DRF, and they've kept him back and nice and fresh for this race. He looked good on Hurdle's debut, and then he was beaten. Very disappointing. It was second place to the Willie Mullins horse. And I kind of felt maybe Romeo Coulier wasn't good enough then, but then he did come back and win the Grade 1 next time, which beat in Blue Devassi, I think it was, at Leopardstown just after Christmas. I know there was excuses for his defeat the time before, so maybe you can give him the benefit of the doubt about that. I know they've never felt the horse has been better than he is now, so he's a fair price. And as much as I don't really fancy him to beat the favourite, if the favourite does things wrong throughout the race, Romeo Coulier might be one to keep an eye on. Obviously, the other horse I mentioned, William Money, he looked very good in his bumper, and then obviously he's been beaten a couple of times, but last time he looked pretty good in Victory, and he looks like he's improving with racing, so maybe he's one to keep an eye on. Work ahead for Henry de Bromhead. He was beaten first time out, but then last time looked very good. Again, beating William Money, so that form's pretty strong there. And I do feel that like maybe softer conditions suits that horse. But again, he's lightly raced, so you're only going on what you've seen so far. Again, he could be one that's got a lot of improvement in him. But yeah, I wouldn't like just dismiss him. Salvatore Mundi of Willie Mullins's, he was a now 5-year-old. He ran in last year's Triumph Hurdle. He's a horse that's always been highly touted. He was 6th, I think it was, in the Triumph Hurdle, behind Cargeese and Madgeborough last year, so that's obviously good form, but he would have to be better than that to win this Supreme. He won the Moscow Flyer last time, and he did a lot wrong throughout the race, but he was keen, and I know Townend, the jockey, was just trying to, just hold him back and not blow his race early on. So I just felt his jumping wasn't very slick, but I think because they were holding him back, they were preventing him from, jumping slick, if you get me. But at the same time, he was keen, and he has to be a lot more settled as well in the Supreme. He's also it's got potential as well, but I think it's pretty key that Townend has chosen Kopek de Board. I think there was no way he couldn't choose him after DRF. He looks so good. I've not seen many horses win that race in the manner he won, and I think he's going to take a lot of beating. He does have to do a few things right that he's done wrong in the past, but he is lightly raced and he's entitled to do so. So if they can just, get his jumping sorted out a little bit and try and just manage to get him settled throughout the race, I think he'll be the one that turns out to win this race. I really do. Of the English, I'd say probably Triply Flyer's the best of ours over here. He's got a lot to do, to be fair, to be mixing it with Kopek de Board, Romeo Coulier, and what he's done so far. He did win at Kempton a couple of weeks ago, and he looks a nice horse for the future. But it's a big jump in class to anything that he's done so far, to be able to mix it with the likes of Kopek, Romeo Coulier, and work ahead. I think this race can be an Irish domination, and I could see them filling the first 3 or 4 places, no problem here. But yeah, my selection for the race is Kopek de Board for Willie Mullins and Paul Townend to get punters off to a flyer.
Thank you very much to Steve Allpress. A superb preview there of the 2025 Supreme Novices Hurdle, the first race on day 1 of the 2025 Cheltenham Festival. What do I think of the race? I hear you all asking. Well, I'm really in the same boat to Steve, really, as I have also identified the favourite. I'm quite strong on the favourite, Kopek de Board. I identified it when it won the £52,000 bumper last year. I like the pedigree of it. There's a video on my personal Patreon page outlining why I think the horse is decent. I'm not really one for repeating my content. People really do need to go and check the Patreon video out at some point if they want to know my views on the horse. That's why I did the video, so I don't have to keep repeating myself in content like this. But yeah, I was impressed when he won the bumper the first day. Rather like Steve, on Boxing Day, I thought the horse jumped terribly. There's no other word for it. But you can see then that the engine of the horse really got the horse out of trouble on that day, I think. And rather like Steve, I was hoping that the horse could use that as some sort of a springboard, an ironic term there, as he looked like he needed a springboard to get over some of them on the first time over hurdles to go on. Dublin Racing Festival, they did seem a lot of confidence behind the horse before the race, and I think he justified that confidence. I thought he put in a superb performance on the day at the Dublin Racing Festival to destroy the field, really, is the only word for it. And I think he lines up in this race as a very worthy favourite. Other ones, I've identified actually another one in the race, though, and that to me is a very interesting horse. And that is the horse owned by Ireland's biggest gambler and trained by Ireland's most proficient trainer, and that is Irancy. Very lightly raced horse, Irancy, very well bred horse. Again, the video is on Patreon for you all to watch at your own convenience, really. If you haven't watched it already, then I don't know what to say to you. The video's been up a few months. The form of the horse is what it is. I thought it ran I actually identified the horse last year when it ran in a maiden hurdle behind Ballyburn and Firefox. I think, I can't remember which one won on the day. I think Firefox might have beaten Ballyburn on that day, with Irancy definitely finishing third behind the two. Firefox to me is a good yardstick, really, it's looking like, and not much else. You can see there that he fell short at Group 1 level in the Supreme Novices Hurdle, Grade 1 Novice Hurdle last year. And this year over Novice Chases, he's a sort of filled a similar position. But everybody knows what Ballyburn went on to do. Dominant Novice Hurdler this year, put in his place Novice Chasing, albeit with the weight allowance by Sir Gino, in what was a scintillating performance. But Ballyburn is back this week for more in the Brown Advisory. And this year, Irancy has only had one run all season. He managed to get off the mark over hurdles. And I do think it's quite interesting since then, with all these graded races and all these graded trials that are available for this horse, Irancy, connections have chosen not to run the horse. Whether the horse has had a setback, either they know what they've got, and they're just trying to keep the horse as under wraps as possible so they get the best value on the day, or the horse is going to prove to be not good enough. But at the sort of prices I'm sort of seeing and justifying the connections and the pedigree that I've seen, Irancy is one that I have identified, and I am very much looking forward to seeing how he runs. I have a quick glance at these hurdlers, but I don't really like to follow many. My national novice hurdlers will ideally come out of bumpers, or they'll be relatives of horses I've followed, or I'll pick them up along the way, which is the case really for the two that I've identified. William Money, to me, has to be interesting, although he's got good form behind Work Ahead and Kawabunga. He managed to beat the Great Nudie by 15 lengths last time, running to a mark on the Racing Post of 144. Third in the Grade 1 Punchestown bumper. Pedigree is not too bad, but I've decided to leave the horse. William Money is from the family of Mr. McGoldrick. People might remember that one going round and maybe even winning at a few Cheltenham festivals, The second dam anchor in is actually the dam of Mr. McGoldrick, if you fancy William Money. And the other one I did have a quick look at earlier in the season. I'm open-minded to trying these ones as well. I might try a few more workforces. I think he either left to join, left Ireland siring national horses to go and sire in Japan, or the horse came back from Japan to sire national hunt horses. I'm not entirely sure, but Work Ahead is a very similar one. He was third behind last year's Cheltenham bumper winner Jasmine DeVoe on debut, and then beat William Money by 7 lengths. And the pedigree of it's not interesting as well. There's just not much of it. The horse is actually a half brother to Bron. I don't know if people remember Bron. He was going around for Simon Munier and Isaac Sweddy. He actually turned out to be a fairly decent staying chaser. Best racing post rating of 159. And the second dam is related to the 155 rated former Martin Pipe and David Johnson, I think, owned it. Classified. So at the top of the pedigree, it's not too bad. But to me, there's just not the numbers. There's about 10 or 11, well, less than that, 8 or 9 foals out of the dams, both the two dams, and they would be at the top, and there's a lot more underneath them than there is around them. So, yeah, risky options, I think. I think my two, Copec de Bordes and Irancy, I'm more than happy to side with them on the day. Copec de Bordes, obviously, very little value on the day. I think he's just trading, as I just looked, the best price available, just ahead of even money. But so it's looking like, for me, a nice, responsible each-way selection on Irancy will have to do. But like I said, I'm expecting the favourite to be quite difficult to beat on the day in what looks a decent, if not red-hot, renewal of the race. Right, we're going to try and keep the pace strong today, hopefully, like some of the horses. And I'm going to hand you over now to Steve Allpress, who is going to preview the first Grade 1 novice chase of the weekend, the Arkle. Steve, it's over to you.
Right, on to the second race of the festival is the Arkle Challenge Trophy Novices Chase, Grade 1 over 2 miles. Unfortunately, Sir Gino won't be lining up due to issues it's had leading up to the festival. I think it's a massive shame, as the horse has got so much potential, and he looked absolutely breathtaking in his chase at Kempton at Christmas time, and it's such a blow for Connections that he won't be here. But hopefully we'll see him again in the future, and hopefully he'll have a crack at the champion chase next year if they can get him back. But anyway, we'll go on to the race. Matchborough is the one that you have to be with here for me. He's again trained by Willie Mullins. He'll be ridden by Mark Walsh. Matchborough won last year's Triumph Hurdle. He's only a 5-year-old. He's a horse that's still lightly raced with big potential. And for me, what he did to win the Triumph Hurdle just on his second start was pretty incredible. And he's had 2 chase starts to date. Very impressive on debut. He only beat horses like Tully Hill and Asian Master that were disappointing since then. But I think it was the manner of the way he went throughout the race, and he jumped on that occasion, that just opened a lot of eyes. And I felt that day that of all the horses likely to turn up in the Arkle, he would be the one most likely to give Sir Gino problems. He then went to DRF, and I was pretty impressed on the day, to be honest with you. He looked pretty keen throughout the race, and he was doing a lot early on. And I remember just watching it, I was a little bit concerned early on in the race that he was bolting off a little bit. But to be fair, the horse won very nicely. It did make several jumping errors throughout, but he never looked like falling. And I know there's a lot of people going into this Arkle crabbing his jumping. And although on that occasion he did miss several fences out, I think he's shown me enough at his fences, certainly on debut and, for half the race at DRF, that his jumping's not an issue. I think, again, he's a horse with a massive engine, and he's got a lot of potential, and also he stays well as well. I think this is a horse that might go up in trip later in his career, but he's certainly got a lot of pace as well. So I think he's got that combination which is well suited to the Arkle. And I look through it as his opposition. I look through the opposition in this race, and I don't think there's a horse that's at the same level as Matchborough. And for that reason, he'd be my strong selection in this race. Obviously, there's going to be drying ground, and I do think Matchborough will be able to cope with it. I would prefer if it was a little bit softer for him, but I don't think it'll be an issue to the extent where it's going to cost him victory, if you know what I mean. But, yeah, he's Madgebra's a horse that I'm really excited about here, and he could be one that goes on to next year's Champion Chase as well. But yeah, Madgebra is my selection for this race. I'll go for a couple of the others. Nicky Henson. He's had a good start to his career. He's been runner-up on a few occasions. Last time out at Sandown, I think his stamina was stretched on bad ground. So obviously stepping back in trip here, but I think the race might be a little bit sharp for him. I think he is a 2.5 miler, this horse, and obviously now they've taken the turners away from the festival. I think it's either go for the shorter trip or go for the longer trip, and I think he's one of those horses that's in the middle, and I don't really think it'd suit him. But of the two races, I do think that Arkle is more suitable than the Brown Advisory for him, and I think race tactics will be important too with him. I think they're going to have to make a lot of use of him because of his stamina, and I think he could be a horse that's up there with Madgebra at the top of the hill. But I think when they're coming down the hill, when it gets to the business end of the race, I think Madgebra's going to have a little bit too much boot for him. Of the others, you got Lou du Sud. Sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly, but he's trained obviously by Harry Skelton, ridden by Dan Skelton. He's unbeaten this season over fences. He's won at Sandown, Warwick. He's looked good. Last time out, he wasn't visually impressive, but sometimes I find Warwick does that with horses. But yeah, he's a horse that brings quite a nice level of form to the race. I don't quite think he's good enough to win the race, but I think, I think he'll be the horse fighting it out for second myself. Of the others, you've got the two Irish Raiders in there. You've got the Gavin Cromwell Only by Night. She won at Exeter last time. She's a fair mare, but I think this jump up in class is a bit too much for her. And you got the runner-up to Madgebra, DRF Touch Me Not. He's also ran some decent races, and to be fair, I'm surprised he's the outsider of the five here, because I think his form last time behind Madgebra at DRF is probably best form line going into the Arkle. So I think, Madgebra had him well beat, but, he ran well there in second, and he might be one also that's in contention here to follow Madgebra home. But yeah, Madgebra is my selection for this race, a confident selection. I think he's a horse that's got a lot going for him here, and I think hopefully Mark Walsh can get him into a nice rhythm, nice clean jump in, and I think he's going to be too powerful for these and too classy. So Madgebra is my selection for the Arkle Chase.
Thank you very much to Steve Allpress. A terrific preview there of the Arkle Chase, the first Grade 1 novice chase of the Cheltenham Festival. The way I identify my horses, I just identify them like years in advance. So I'll pick them up as bumpers and novice hurdlers, my novice chasers. With such a small field lining up for this year's Arkle, only 5 runners. I'm afraid if you're looking for a selection from me for the Arkle, you're going to be very disappointed. I was looking forward to the clash. It seems to be the modern way to send these 5-year-old second season hurdlers over fences now to avoid the problem of second season hurdlers struggling at 5. I'm sure it would have been a great clash between Sir Gino and Madgebra. I'd say on the form, Sir Gino's win over Ballyburn, I would have fancied the Nicky Henderson horse a little bit more than Madgebra. But yeah, it looks like Madgebra hasn't been presented with a good opportunity for the horse to follow up his Triumph Hurdle victory at last year's Cheltenham Festival. What I will touch on is the race before I hand back over to Steve. In the 240, I've got a little bit of a handicap action on mine. I've actually identified another one on the Patreon channel, and we've got an old favourite lining up as well. Stay Away Faye is the old favourite in question. He's always been a well-bred horse, Stay Away Faye. In fact, there's a novice hurdler running later on in the week, maybe, called the Big Westerner, that is Stay Away Faye's younger half-sister. This horse has actually won at the Cheltenham Festival for me before. He won the 2023 Albert Bartlett by a one length at 18-1. Since then, it hasn't really worked out over fences. The horse did win a Grade 2 over fences and then was third out of 6 behind Capodanno in last year's Pillar Chase. Since then, the horse has been pulled up on his last 3 starts, including once over hurdles. He was pulled up in the Brown Advisory last year at Cheltenham, and then he was also pulled up in the Scottish National last year at Ayr. Since then, he had wind surgery, and that didn't really do the trick, as he was pulled up in a Pertemps hurdle qualifier on Boxing Day. Obviously, this horse has got so much to find, but his mark of 158 has been dropped after those 2 pulled-up chase efforts to 150. So they managed to take half a stone off his back. And to me, I see this horse is entered in the Grand National as well. I think the horse has to show something here to really warrant that. This race, the Ultima, the 240, can be used actually as quite an interesting Grand National trial for those watching the race who just want clues for the future. Another one identified by me is on the Patreon channel, Search for Glory, who's actually a novice. Very interesting that they're choosing to run a novice in this race, I think. The horse has got fair form. He was 7th behind Apple Away in the 2023 Albert Bartlett. That was at Aintree, 7th. He was pulled up in the race, Stay Away Faye won in 2023. He was then 7th at Aintree. I think Stay Away Faye was 3rd or 4th in that race. He hadn't won a race that year over hurdles, so he came back as a novice hurdler the next year and managed to secure 2 Grade 3 hurdle victories. But in one of them, he was actually ahead of some decent horses. He was also 3rd, beaten by Croke Park, who's developed into a decent chaser this year, 7th behind Stella Story. The horse actually has ran in 2 Albert Bartletts, this horse. Chase campaign has been okay-ish. He won on debut quite nicely, beating Summer Jess by 8 lengths. Since then, he was second out of 3, but he was placed 3rd out of 7 behind Impere Pass in the 2024 Forheat Novices Chase, before finishing 10th behind Back to Normal in a Grade 3 handicap chase at the Dublin Festival. He raced off 144 that day. Connections have dropped him a pound to 143 on the day. I mean, to me, there's novice handicaps later on in the week. I mean, do they fancy this one? Hard to say. To me, he turned up 10 times over hurdles and was solid. His chase form does look a little bit better at this point. So to me, I don't know. I think obviously with there both being handicaps, they're both very, very risky. But I will probably chance them both each way because they're my horses. Search for Glory and Stay Away Faye. The next race on the card is the 320, the Mare's Hurdle. I'm going to touch on this one quickly as well in this segment before I hand over to Steve. It's a very competitive race this year, but again, a lot of mine seem to have gone fencing this year. Limerick Lace, Birdie or Bust, who's placed in the race last year, was one of my contenders earlier in the season. I was looking at horses really to step up out of the novice campaign, really, and maybe take this race in. But it hasn't happened this year again. As a consequence, I haven't really got any horses on my list that are in this race. One I will give as a tentative little look at Joyeuse, even though obviously Lossy Mouth, the Triumph Hurdle, and last year's winners along an odds-on selection and has got a bit of a class edge on these, it's fair to say. What I will point out is Joyeuse. Joyeuse won a handicap in decent style last time out, still lightly raced. She's only raced 5 times in her career, winning 3. And I did know that she's from the family of Epitante, who won the Champion Hurdle. Joyeuse has got a bit to find on the figures with some of these coming out of Handicap Company. But to me, I think she has the pedigree being tied into Epitante. She could improve and get involved for Ireland's biggest gambler, but that would be a very tentative selection indeed. Right, I'm going to hand over to Steve now for his preview of the 2025 Mare's Hurdle. Steve, It's over to you.
So on to the Close Brothers Mares Hurdle, grade 1 over 2.5 miles. I'll start off here with the horse. There's been a lot of discussion about over recent days and weeks in Lossiemouth, the Willie Mullins trained mare. Been a lot of talk regarding what race should she have gone for. Should it have been the Champion Hurdle? Should it have been the Mares Hurdle? What are the reasons from going here rather than the Champion Hurdle? So my point of view really is this. Is it disappointing she's not in the Champion Hurdle? Yes, I do feel after what she did last season and the build-up and everything this season, I feel she should be in there for that kind of reason. However, for the horse and the way its last couple of races have panned out, I do feel that the Mares Hurdle is the race she's more likely to win of the two. We know she stays the trip well from when she won it last year. We know she's got a class advantage on all of her opposition here. She's coming into race on the back of the full, which is always a question mark. And obviously Paul Townend's chosen her over stable companion Jade de Grugy, who herself holds quite a high level of form. So I think when you look at all the factors, I think they've gone for the right race. Obviously, it's disappointing she's not in the Champion Hurdle. And, you know, we've heard a lot of talk in recent months, the clash with Constitution Hill and all of this. And you've kind of got to the point where you're just expecting her to turn up for the Champion Hurdle. You're hoping that she turns up there. But obviously, they've made that last-minute decision to switch. And I do think for the horse, I think they've made the right decision. Although that won't go down with a lot of people. But I just got this impression that they've switched because they knew they had to. That's my take on the horse anyway. But anyway, regarding her chances for the Mares Hurdle, now she's in here. Obviously, she won the race last year. She's very high class. I think she's like a mid 160s horse. So she's going to have a good, you know, nearly a stone on some of these horses in this race. And I think she's going to take an awful lot of beating. If she wasn't in the race, I'd be with her companion, Jade de Grugy. She's looked very good. Last year, she was defeated at the festival. But I've always said this about Jade de Grugy. 2 miles is too sharp for her. 2.5 miles is her trip. She had a good time off after last season, and she only made a reappearance several weeks ago. So it is quite a quick turnaround after a long absence. But she's got a high level of form, and she could be one that gives Lossiemouth most to do. There's a few other horses in here that are fairly decent horses in their own right, and I'm not saying this is a one horse race, but there's a few other horses in here that, you know, they're good horses, but they have got to jump up. July Flower's one of them, Femry de Bromhead, ridden by Rachel Blackmore. She's got some nice form in front. She won last time out. She's got a lot of potential, a lot of unknowns about her, but she's one that could move forward. Joyeuse, Nicky Ensign, one big handicap last time. Bit disappointing early on in the season, but last time looked back to its, you know, what they were expecting her to be. She's been supplemented for the race. She's a decent horse. Again, she's got to jump up in class here and show a bit more, but, you know, she's going the right way now. A horse that's disappointed this season that there was a lot of hype about last year, and she's a good horse, but I think last time on the bad ground, I think's really knocked her back. Dysart Enos for Fergal O'Brien. This horse had a lot of potential last year, and if you're willing to give her the benefit of the doubt for the disappointing run last time, she might be one at a massive price to run into a place here. She was third on seasonal debut, but she was giving weight away and needed the run. But last time she was very disappointing, so she's got to turn the corner from that day. But that was a long time ago now, and that was on really bad ground. So, you know, maybe the better ground and the break, maybe they can get her back. Take no chances. Skelton, that beat Cargeese last time. She's a fair horse. I think 2.5 miles, going back up to 2.5 miles will suit her. You know, there's some fair horses in this race, in this mare's race, but again, I keep going back to it. They have to jump up in class here to beat Lossiemouth. If Lossiemouth is fine after the fall and she's showing the right signs and she turns up and brings her A game, I'm fairly certain she'll win this race. But there is a few question marks about her. All in all, I think Lossiemouth is definitely my selection in here, and I think Jade de Grugy will give her most to do. But, you know, I think the Mares Hurdle, it's a deeper Mares Hurdle than last season. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But, yeah, Lossiemouth is my selection. Thank you.
Thank you very much there to Steve Allpress for taking a look at the 2025 Mares Hurdle on day one of the Cheltenham Festival. We're now heading to the feature race on the first day, the Champion Hurdle, the Blue Ribbon event on the first day. And who better to start off the Reprieve Media CIC double handful coverage of the Cheltenham Festival than the host with the most. He's been with us every year for the last 7 Cheltenham Festivals, I think, ever since he tipped up Bouverdare to win this very race against my York Hill and many others. It's an absolute pleasure to have him back again. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you with his preview of the 2025 Cheltenham Hurdle, the one and the only Steve Allpress.
So then, on to the feature race on day one. The race I'm looking forward to most at the whole festival is the Unibet Champion Hurdle Grade 1 over 2 miles. We've got the king of jump racing and former champion Constitution Hill. We've got State Man, the current champion, and we've got Brighter Days Ahead, the Great Pretender. This is going to be a fantastic race. Even with Lossiemouth switching to the mares, we're in for a hell of a race here. Very excited about this. I think Brighter Days Ahead coming into the race has added a lot to it. There's been a lot of talk about her. As you well know from last year, she's also I've always had huge admiration for. I've been on her side for every race she's turned up in previously. She was so impressive against State Man last time, albeit below past State Man. He didn't turn up that day. But even without that, Brighter Days Ahead last year at Aintree looked magnificent. I know she was beaten at Cheltenham, but before then she looked a horse with massive potential. She's a horse that's going forward. She's obviously getting the £7 weight allowance here, and she deserves to be in this lineup. I thought she was going to go to the mares, to be honest with you, throughout the season. Obviously, once she put in that big performance last time, there was always the hint that she might turn up here. Connections have been brave to take on Constitution Hill because he is the one they've got to beat. He is the one level they've got to rise up to here. So yeah, it's going to be an intriguing race. For me, Constitution Hill will win this race. I think he's the level of form he's shown over the last few years is exceptional. I think he's shown form that would win, you know, all, if not most, champion hurdles. Certainly in my generation. He obviously had his problems last season, but I think since Christmas this season, he's shown plenty to me that he's back to his best, or certainly close to it, if not. I was happy with his reappearance at Kempton at Christmas. He was a little bit rusty. You can see from the approach in the last, he was a little bit rusty, but I think he showed a lot of zest throughout the race. His jumping was nice, slick, smooth. And he showed me a lot of signs there that he was certainly on the way back. He ran at Cheltenham since then in the Unibet Hurdle. It was just a canter round for him that day. There was no opposition really to beat. I know he made a blunder at the last flight, but all in all, again, I think it's just like to the eye, you could see that he was back. Went to Campton for the gallop. several weeks ago. It was only a small piece of work for him, as Connections have obviously made everyone aware of. Again, he looked very well to me, and more recently, I know it's only a brief video clip, but I just saw a brief video clip of him jumping several flights of hurdles at home, and he looked absolutely electric. When Connections say they've got him back, I know it's guesswork. I know the ratings might show he's running a little bit below what he was a couple of years ago. But just to my expert eye and gut feeling, I think Constitution Hill's back. And I think we're going to see the real Constitution Hill in this champion hurdle. And if the real Constitution Hill turns up, even the brilliant Brighter Days Ahead, getting £7 will not beat him. I'm absolutely convinced. I think she's going to run a big race, but I think she's going to come up second best here. State Man, a runner-up and the current champion, and with, he's just sitting there and no one's talking about him. He's been a tremendous horse over the last few years. He obviously won the county hurdle, runner-up in the champion hurdle, then won the champion hurdle last year with Constitution Hill not being there. He's won grade 1 after grade 1. He's a tremendous horse in his own right. I do have this feeling he's not quite the same horse that he was. Even if he was the same horse that he was, I don't think he's quite good enough. Well, I know he's not quite good enough, but I still don't think he's even the horse he was last year. I know he won last time, and it was hard to know what would have happened with Lossiemouth if she hadn't fallen. My gut feeling is Lossiemouth would have won, but it was too early in the race to really be sure. I think State Man was tired, but I think it was well disguised when he swung in at DRF, and I think he just coasted home. But I think the way Daddy Longlegs finished and got close to him, I just have this feeling that State Man was on empty. Could be wrong, but I've this feeling. I do also think State Man's better on better ground, so I do think the conditions will suit him in this year's champion hurdle, but I don't think he's going to be good enough to threaten the big two in the market. Of the others, all good on them turning up, Golden Ace and Burdett Road. They're going to be looking for some prize money. You've got King of Kingsfield in here and Winter Fog. Obviously, they're going to be pace setters, I'd imagine. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be able to take Constitution Hill any further than the fourth flight. They're going to try and make it a relentless end-to-end gallop to help Brighter Days Ahead and her stamina. But I think all it's going to do is benefit Constitution Hill as well. And I've got a feeling the big two are going to take over these pace setters, even at halfway. And I think it's going to be game on then. I think State Man's going to be in behind them, just trying to keep tabs on them. But I think gradually, one by one, Burdett Road, Golden Ace, State Man, I think they're gradually going to drop away. And I think Constitution Hill is going to take over before they swing in. And I think it's going to be good night. That's what I want to happen. That's what I think is going to happen. And regardless of what happens to Brighter Days Ahead in this race, if she's second or third, fair play to Connections for giving it a crack. If she had gone in the mare's hurdle, I'd be absolutely convinced she would beat Lossiemouth. She's a better horse over 2.5 miles, but she's coming back here to give it a big crack, and fair play to him. But I do think that the trip is slightly short for her, and I think she's up against an absolute machine. And any other year, she might win this champion hurdle. But I just have a feeling she's going to come out second best here. So Constitution Hill is my selection, and I think Brighter Days Ahead will be second. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
What a magnificent preview of the 2025 Blue Ribbon Dart Race of day one of the Cheltenham Festival, the Champion Hurdle. Fantastically done, as always, by Steve Allpress. It's a race I'm looking forward to this year. A terrific renewal of the Champion Hurdle. I don't really tend to get too involved in open races. I'm more looking at the juvenile hurdles and the novice hurdlers. By the time they get into open company, they sort of are what they are, and they have to take their chance. I personally thought Brighter Days Ahead would end up going novice chasing this year after her very creditable Mares Novice Hurdle campaign last year. But no, she surprised everybody, and she has taken her form over hurdles, I think, this year to a brand new level. She has absolutely dominated the Irish national hunt racing hurdling scene, putting State Man firmly in his place this season. And I do think she goes there as the leading Irish contender and very worthy of her chance. One thing I think could be crucial in this race, it's something Steve has talked about in the past as not really being much of a fan of, is the weight allowance that mares receive in races such as this. Yes, we all know the former champion Constitution Hill is a magnificent horse. He's proved that on many an occasion. But the big question is he £7 better than Brighter Days Ahead? He's going to have to be in order to give this mare the weight in this race, I think. We've got a top-class mare this year. Rather like what Steve said in the mare's hurdle, I think if Lossy Mouth had turned up and beat Constitution and took on Constitution Hill, I think Constitution Hill would have been able to beat Lossy Mouth. But with this mare here, Brighter Days Ahead, I don't think I'm too sure. Beautifully bred mare, it's fair to say. Brighter Days Ahead, of course, being out of the top-class producer Matney, who has bred horses like Grade 1 winning Novice Chasers, Caldwell Potter and Mighty Potter, as well as horses like French Dynamite and Indiana Jones, two horses in their own right who are very good. She was actually one identified on the YouTube channel, so she is still available on there. She was identified when she was going round in National Hunt flat races. So safe to say I've been with her a long time, and nothing would give me greater pleasure and greater satisfaction than to have identified the winner of the champion hurdle 2 years, over 2 years in fact, before the horse actually managed to win the race. Can she do it? Well, I think she's going to have to set the factions perfectly, and I think she's going to have to jump well, because I think any mistake could be crucial here. And I think the top two, Constitution Hill and Brighter Days Ahead, it's one of the clashes of the week. And I, for one, am immensely looking forward to it, it's fair to say. And I'm hoping, as long as they all come back safe and sound, and hopefully they will do that, I'm hoping that the best horse wins. We should be in for an incredible spectacle in that race. Right, I think that was it for Steve. I don't think he's got any selections at all in the last two handicaps of the day. So I will say thank you very much to Steve for previewing the 4 feature races on day one. Yeah, I know he's on course on day 1 and day 2, I think. So hopefully Steve will be back at some point to preview day 2 and stay with us for the rest of the week. It's always an absolute pleasure to have him with us. Steve, thank you very much for giving up your time to do Champion Cheltenham this year of the day 1. It is very much appreciated. Right, what am I touching on? The 440. I know I've not got one in that race. The juvenile novice hurdle used to be the Fred Winter. It's now sponsored by Hallgarten and Novum Wines. Drink responsibly, gamble responsibly. The horse is still registered as the Fred Winter. No longer a pattern race, these two. This is a premier handicap now as a field of 22. I'm only following one juvenile hurdle this year, and all being well, he will line up in the Triumph. So it's over to the 520, which I think is a race that they've taken some of the romance out of. This race used to be, I think it used to be a graded race for amateur riders. But I don't know why they've done it. They've made the race a novices handicap chase, and they have also restricted the race to non-amateur jockeys. Claimers are obviously allowed to ride in it, but the days of amateur jockeys going around Cheltenham in the National Hunt Challenge Cup seem to sadly be a thing of the past. It's a race that they've really tinkered with recently. It used to be a 4-mile race, which I thought was perfect to give a novice a springboard to a maybe Grand National campaign somewhere later on in the season. If the horse was exposed enough, a good try at a trip. But the trip has been reduced by 2 furlongs as well to 3 miles and 6 furlongs. And part of me for this race thinks that the only way you could please some people regarding this race is to just not run it. You know, it seems to be one of the races at the festival which comes in for some stick every year. What have I got in the race? Well, I've got an interesting one, Hashting. I've looked at Hashting a few times because I actually noted this horse. It's actually quite closely related to Irancy, the horse I identified over hurdles. Hashting is out of a dam called Trendy, and the Trendy is out of a dam called Debandade, the second dam. Irancy is out of a dam called Nasora, and would you Adam and Eve it, the dam of Nasora is Debandade as well. So obviously I've kept an interest in Hashting. I've followed him a few times. He was fourth when I first watched him in the 22nd of November. Since then, he's gone up the weights nicely, winning two egg and spoon handicap chases, both at Windsor. And since then, he's gone up the ratings nicely to a mark of 133 from a mark of 119. He was fourth last time out between Victorino in a grade 3 handicap chase. That's disappointing to see. I didn't think that's wrong. There's not a graded race anymore. They put a G3 in there, but I think the racing post is wrong there. Fourth behind Victorino in that race in his first time at 3 miles. To me, I think we were nursing him. If you look at his first four runs, they've upped him up in trip every time in his last 4 runs. 2 miles, 2 miles 4, 2 miles 6 and 3 miles. He's an interesting horse, I think. Last season, what was he doing? He was 6th in the Breeders' Fund National Novice Handicap Final over hurdles. He didn't really had quite a light hurdle campaign. The horse was actually 3rd behind Florida Dreams in the 2023 Grade 2 Aintree Bumper. So the horse has actually got some decent bumper form and some decent-ish handicap chase form. Could he still be well handicapped? Well, it's hard to say, really. It's not like Irancy has set the bar that high. He can still be unexposed to a certain degree, I think, Hashting. And I think he might be worth chancing in this race. So he will be my tentative selection for the last race of the day, Hashting. I think we can wrap this video up now. Thank you, everybody, for watching the Day 1 preview of the 2025 Cheltenham Festival with myself and Steve Allpress. I will end the day, I think, by giving my selections first, and then I will hand over to Steve for his selections. My selections today are going to be in the Supreme Novices Hurdle. I'm going to select Irancy each way. I couldn't forgive myself if the horse was to run well. And the other selection of the day, it would be to win Brighter Days Ahead in the Champion Hurdle. So they're my selections for the day. I will hand you over to Steve now, who will quickly go through his selection.
So then my nap selection on day 1 is Constitution Hill in the Champion Hurdle. And my each way selection, I'm going to go into the Mares Hurdle and I'm going to go for Dysart Enos at big price. So those are my selections.
Thank you very much, Steve. Some interesting selections there. I'm sure you will agree. For day 1 of the Cheltenham Festival, I will give mine again quickly and then I will recap Steve's. My selections are in the Supreme Novice Hurdle, Irancy each way, and in the Champion Hurdle, it's developing into another clash of the Titans, Newman versus Allpress. I will select Brighter Days Ahead to win the Champion Hurdle. A quick recap of Steve's selections. His each way selection of the day is Dysart Enos in the Mares Hurdle, and his win selection is the mighty Constitution Hill to regain his Champion Hurdle crown. Right, that's day 1 over and done with, everybody. It's going to promises to be a fantastic day of racing. Good luck to everybody involved. Stay mathematically responsible, stay sound, and I'm sure if your judgment is okay on these things, you will find the next week, a very enjoyable experience. Hopefully, good luck to all the connections of all the horses as well. Hopefully, all horses and jockeys will come back safe and sound. But thank you very much to everybody for listening. Regarding the rest of the week, this is day 1 of 4. I'm hoping that Steve and myself will be back throughout the week to do daily previews on every day of the 2025 Cheltenham Festival. Fingers crossed. So keep an eye on this YouTube channel, the Reprieve Media CIC organisational YouTube channel for that. But for now, take care, everybody. Have a fantastic week's racing, Enjoy yourselves, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and goodbye.